So solving quadratics by the square root property. In the first one, what you need to do, just move the -2 to the other side, so it becomes x squared equals 9. And therefore, you square root both sides, and you'd end up with x equals, when you square root, you always get plus or minus 3. So that's the answer for the first one. The second one, you're going to use the same strategy. Here, you have a square here. So to get rid of this square, you have to square root both sides. So you square root this side and you square root this side. Now the square root cancels the square, so x over 2/3 equals. And when you square root this, you're going to get plus or minus. Square root of 5, it's just going to stay 5, but the square root of 9 is 3. Now move the 2/3 to the other side, and you'll end up with x equals -2/3. When you move to the other side, change the sign, plus or minus root 5 over 3. We'll leave it in exact values, and that will give us -2 plus or minus root 5 over 3. The third one, we have to do a little bit of simplifying first before we could use the square root property. So the first thing, I'm gonna square both of these, and here I'm gonna get 2 squared is 4, and the x squared just gives me 4. 4x squared minus 9 equals x squared. I'm gonna move the -9 to the other side, changes to +9, and I'm moving the x squared to this side, it becomes minus x squared. So 4x squared minus x squared equals 9. That gives me 3x squared equals 9. Divide both sides by 3. And then we'll end up with x squared equals 3. At this stage, now you could square root both sides, and you're going to get x. Don't forget the plus or minus root 3 as your final answer. Fourth one, here, to get rid of this square, I'm going to square root both sides. So if I'm going to square root this and this will end up giving me -x squared plus 1 equals, don't forget the plus or minus, square root of 4 is 2. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to move the 1 to the other side. So I'm going to get -x squared equals -1 when you move to the other side, plus or minus 2. And therefore, now I have two situations. I have -x squared equals -1 plus 2. And I have -x squared equals -1 minus 2. Now in this one here, you have -x squared equals 1. Divide both sides by -1 to get the x squared by itself. X squared equals -1. Square root both sides. You cannot do it because you cannot square root a negative number. Here, you're going to get -x squared equals -3. Divide both sides by -1. You'll end up with x squared equal 3. Now you square root both sides, and x equals, don't forget the plus or minus, square root of 3. Done.